up a dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, so I remember I share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the group. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Spectrum. I am your host, Barnaby Jones from Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. Thank you for tuning in today. Today, we are live. We are back in studio, and joining us today, we have Lee Warner. Happy Thursday, everyone. And yes, Lee, we are live. You can comment on today's show because we'll actually listen because we're not recorded today. And Kim Kincaid, welcome as well to the show. Thank you for joining us, guys. Coming up, if you are looking to spend some time with myself and members of the Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, we are going to be in Murfreesboro, Illinois for the Big Muddy Monster Festival this Saturday. You can come down there and hang out with us if you're in the area. Then coming up June 30th, I will be at the Lodi Public Library in Wisconsin. Gotta enlarge this. We are doing a streaming of the Wisconsin Bigfoot Hairy Man of Dairyland documentary with the Wisconsin Bigfoot Group. You can get all that information. That is going to be July 12th. And all the information here is on the screen. Otherwise, you can go to the Wisconsin CAPS Facebook page and click on the public events for information on all these events as well. Then I'm going to be at the Cedarburg Public Library July 17th. July 19th, we are doing a CE5 event in southern Wisconsin with the Central Wisconsin CE5 group of Facebook and PBS Wisconsin. So it's going to be a great event. Hopefully you guys can come out and check that out. We are going to be at UFO Days in Elmwood, Wisconsin, Silcon in Gaze, Illinois, the Van Meter Visitor Festival in Iowa, and the Neenah Public Library coming up on October 29th, which is a paranormal presentation as well as a paranormal investigation of the library. Then we head to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, April 17th through the 19th, and Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, May 8th through the 10th. That is what we got coming up, guys. All that information is on our website at the public events page. So head on over and check that out if you want more information. We are going to dive right into today's episode with my wonderful guest here. So let's get that going. Again, guys, we are live today, and joining us all the way at 5 a.m. over in New Zealand is our guest, Gina Noetica. She is a quantum alchemist, the Center of Consciousness coach, Reiki Master Teacher, and lifelong interdimensional communicator based in New Zealand. She is the founder of the Center for Expanding Consciousness, and she has devoted the last 2.5 decades to guiding others in healing, awakening, and reconnecting with the vast field of universal intelligence. She is a CE5 Ambassador and contactee trained in person by Dr. Steven Greer. Gina has a grounded approach to weaving together earth-based ritual, energy magic, and cosmic contact to help others access altered states, initiate peaceful ET contact, and explore the multidimensional nature. She leads retreats, facilitates cacao ceremonies. She is a water carrier and teaches energy mastery through a unique blend of ancient and modern practices, whether through remote viewing, sensory vision, astral travel, CE5, plant medicine, meditation, breathwork, or quantum energy healing. Gina's work is dedicated to activating humanity's innate potential and bridging worlds and the unseen. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Gina. Welcome, Gina. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Barnaby. What a treat. And gosh, you're getting around the place too, aren't you? You've got lots on there in America. Amazing.
Oh yeah, I try. We go all over the place and do everything. My group is cryptids, anomalies, and paranormal. So we have team members that specialize in all different aspects of the everything from cryptids, UFOs, paranormal, and we dive into it all. So
Wow.
awesome. Well, let's start out. Whenever I have any kind of mediums or workers or anything on, I want to talk about, like, how do you communicate as far as how does it work for you? Do you see things? Do you just have emotions? Like, what is it that how you communicate, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it's a knowing. It's a more of a cognitive type knowing. I'm quite clairaudient. That's my most dominant sense. And then I'm quite clairvoyant as well. But usually visuals will come after what I hear. But having that inner knowing is the first thing that happens. It's just a knowing something's about to happen, or it's a knowing of looking in a certain direction before something might appear or be there. And I have an internal guidance within me. So I work both with people, but also within environments. And my senses work slightly different depending on whether I've got someone physically in front of me or whether I'm actually out in the field or in an environment. When I'm working with someone right in front of me, then my actual sensory system and my feelings is what I feel first. But I don't feel in the way that I've trained myself a few decades ago not to feel internally. Like if someone's got an upset stomach, for example, I'm not going to feel an upset stomach because I don't want to feel that way. And for me, wanting to be a sustainable lifetime healer, I don't want to start taking on any of the feelings that people are feeling themselves. So I get a knowing within me that, oh, something might be going on with their stomach, but I don't feel it as though they have it in the same way that they experience it. And my hands are very sensitive. So if I'm actually going through someone's energy field, usually I will get sensations in my hands that will indicate that, yeah, that healing is required in that area for that person. So yeah, it's a combination of an inner knowing and a feeling, mainly through my hands and through my energy field. if I'm doing something that's not one-on-one with someone, so more out in the field, then it's more my audio, like my clear audience and my clairvoyance that will kick in.
Interesting. Yeah, I work with quite a few mediums and stuff on my team, and then throughout what we do around here, and you get a lot of the feeling, like, oh, I feel like their shoulder hurt, or like they walked with a limp, and they feel it. And that's really interesting that you've kind of externalized that and just put it as a statement instead of an actual feeling.
Yeah, that was really, really important to me, because I know earlier on, when sort of in my early 20s, when I was really trying to gain a bit more mastery over my natural abilities that were coming through, a lot of my mentors were older. So they would have been, anywhere from the mid 40s through to the 70s. And I noticed with their age, they didn't look well. And it really stuck out to me. And when I got courage enough to ask them, like, how is it that you're healers, but you don't look well and you aren't well? And they would say, well, we heal so much, but we take on the energy of the people that they work with. And I thought, I'm never doing that. And but at that time, I kind of was in some ways. And so it took me months and months and months of just setting the command out to the universe and out into the field that I was working, that I'm not to actually feel it in the same way as what my client is. And it worked. It took about 3 months to really start seeing the shifts from me actually physically feeling what my client feels to externalizing it, but still getting the message. And it took about 2 years of refining it. Now it's great. Now it's more like a bit more external, like a TV screen. It's more like, oh, I can see the information. I can understand the information. I can hear it, but I don't take it on in my own physicality at all. And that was super important, because deep in my knowing, I know that I was going to be a healer for life, and I needed to get to a very end of a very long life. So I don't want anything cutting that short.
I can completely understand. I like that. I see them getting older and not looking so well, kind of thing, and I don't want to do that. Yeah. So is that kind of like, this is another thing I would like to talk to you about is, we're in America, obviously, and you're over there. And so I'm really interested in the different techniques, because I know, like, a lot of the stuff you do is probably the same as what we do over here, but is the externalizing kind of thing, is that very common for healers and stuff down there?
No, I don't think it's that common. It's something that I was determined to do. But for me, my healing journey started so early, from when I was a child, so I've always been awakened. You know how some people have stories and they say, oh, at this, I awoke at this stage, and then all these abilities came on, and they have their awakening moment. I've never had that. I was kind of, I guess, just born awake, and I stayed awake in terms of these abilities. But I remember when I was around about 4, I had my mother's friend, Walter, who was a medical herbalist, and he's an intuitive. He came round. He would hold meditation evenings at our home on Wednesday nights. And he was amazing. He would do, like house and land clearings, and he'd be the guy you'd ring up if an exorcism needed to be done and all that kind of stuff. So it was just all on board, energy healing. But I remember him looking at me as a really young kid and going, that girl is going to be an energy healer when she grows up. And when he said that, I had this amazing feeling go over me, like, whoa, I've been seen. Like, someone's actually seen me for who I am. And as a 4-year-old, I didn't, completely understand the logistics about how you become an energy healer or anything like that, but I absolutely knew he was right. And so going forth into my early adulthood, because I knew I wanted to be a sustainable healer, as in have a long career in it, I knew I had to get on top of that really quickly. It's not common. A lot of the time I come across my clients are really established healers, and they've taken, like we've talked about, actually taken on the energy of too many clients for too long. And that creates stagnation within their own body. And it also, in a very subtle way, means they start to lose themselves. They take on too many too much energy from other people, and they become unclear because there's all this other stuff going on within them. So it's not a common thing. I'd like to say that it is. I'd like to change that. But, it also takes discipline. It's not easy, but, all esoteric arts, to be truly done in their most authentic way, does require discipline. It takes a long time, like a lot of commitment. It's not just doing a weekend course and then boom, you're efficient at it. It takes a lot of dedication. Yeah.
Interesting. I was going to ask you this, but you kind of mentioned it. When people have abilities at a young age, we hear like they tend to, get dampened or something because, for whatever reason of stereotypicalness of the world. Well, you're hearing voices. No, you're not. That's, your imaginary friend or whatever and stuff. But you seem to have been brought up in a family and a situation that embraced all this. So do you think that that's why, like, you started at an early age and were able to keep that up?
I think so. I had a really interesting childhood. So I think in those critical years, like say before you sort of get too solid, on this plane, on this earth plane. So, 7 years and younger, those years and the primary school years are really, really interesting. They were my formative years and they were the most creative spiritually. Going on past that, though, my mother became quite unwell. And so I lived with my aunt. Now, she was a strict Catholic. And so that was very contrasting. And I'm grateful for that contrast because it's given me an understanding for religion that I may not have understood had I not actually lived there for 5-6 years of my teenage years. But it was very strict. Like if I pulled out the tarot cards, that was like, devil's work and I'll be kicked out the house sort of thing. She was very strong Catholic. But in contrast to that, going to my earlier years, with my mum and her friend Walter, they were amazing. Even if my mum didn't completely understand my experiences, she never shut them down. And the world really taught me a lot in those early years about the foundations of healing and about our universe and about our consciousness. So, I had a really modest home, nothing flash. We didn't have a lot of money. So we did have a TV and we got 2 channels that turned off, because I was born in the late 70s. So this is, like early 80s. There wasn't a lot of like stuff and I didn't have a lot of toys. But what I did have, and I remember doing this, is playing with my consciousness. So I remember if I was a little bit bored, I'd be like, great, because that was a time that I could actually go and do out-of-body experiences. And I could go and do astral travel. And I clearly remember traveling around the world. I remember going out to a boat on water and experiencing that, going out over to Spain and seeing mosaics in Barcelona. And when I was an adult, I actually did travel there and see places that I had been when I was a 3-year-old or 4-year-old doing these out-of-body experiences, which confirmed to me that, yes, I did actually go to those places. And between the ages of 3 and 6, I was also kind of mentored by our ET friends. I had 3 extraterrestrials that would come to visit on quite a regular basis. And they were really interesting. I always got a feeling wash over me before they would turn up. And so if I was just playing in the house, it was almost like this energy swept over that kind of slightly paralyzed me, meaning I couldn't run or move anywhere too fast. I kind of almost got the command that my body had to go sit on my bed and wait. So when I got that kind of feeling wash over me, that's what I would do. I'd sit on my bed and wait. And then a few moments later, these 3 beings would kind of enter the house and they'd come through the door. They're very polite. And they'd only be a little bit higher than the doorknob on the door. They were sort of slightly different heights, each of them. And they would come in and then everything would kind of just go into this whitewash for me in my vision and I'd end up on their craft. And they were very clinical with the things that they used to do. They were very kind of medical and clinical and curious and kind of tweaking things within me. But I remember their craft and their ship very clearly, the kind of lights and the screens and the way they would use their consciousness to kind of do and activate instructions within the craft. And when I say clinical, is because it wasn't like a lovey-dovey, full lovey-dovey experience, but it wasn't malicious in any way. It was just very kind of like, this is kind of science, and this is kind of medicine, and this is consciousness, and this is very, they're very telepathic and very just straight to the point. But with this, they showed me a lot of energy and how they could just tweak. Like, this is where my quantum alchemy kind of comes from. It's like, you can go into the energy field of a being, any being, but let's talk about humans, and you can see a blueprint, and then you can go in and you can tweak little denser spots within the blueprint of someone and tweak and alchemize what that is. So if that's like a dormant gift, like a piece of human potential waiting to express itself through the human, you can go and tweak it with kind of like this photonic light and this type of energy to kind of activate and lighten up that gift within someone so that it's not dormant anymore. Same goes with like little denser kind of traumatic experiences. If that's sitting within the energy field, you can go in and tweak it with a bit of photonic light, maybe a bit of sound and this and that, and then that will transmute and sort of dissipate out into the universe, so that's no longer held close within the energy field. So they were kind of like doing these things, and it was all very, very interesting. So that was sort of from the age of around about 3 to age 6.5, and that's where my formative years were. It was enough that I can never forget it. So it didn't matter what the world did to me after that. I can't forget those experiences. And I met, skepticism. I mean, even as a child in that playful state, I used to role play these things with ETs going up onto the craft. I used to role play with my friends, and that always thing was a bit odd. And I used to think, why do I have to explain how to role play this so much? Because in my head, I was like, doesn't everyone know this? But I realized that they didn't. And I remember that one of the parents once saying to my mum, where does Gina get these kind of games from? Like these, this information from? Because it wasn't like anything seen on the TV at that stage. So it was all kind of new information. And that's kind of like the first time I realized, oh, not everyone does the same thing. But going later sort of in past that stage, I stopped interacting with those extraterrestrials because I was conditioned through our society around boundaries and around stranger danger, and lots of good reasons for that. But I applied that not unknowingly, but I applied that to our extraterrestrial friends. So that was a bit of a shame, really, because I sort of thought, oh, no, well, they haven't asked permission the way that they're meant to ask permission, and I'm not meant to follow people back into their cars or their vehicles, so I'm not going to follow these ETs back to their craft. And so I started saying no, and they used to be like, are you sure? And it took about 3 interactions of just saying, no, I'm setting my boundaries as I'm saying no, and they were very respectful and they honoured that. So those kind of interactions slowed down. But the next thing that really solidified a lot of this paranormal and consciousness type learnings that I had was when I was 7. My mother got quite fed up with me going on and on to her about how boring school is and how I think everyone's stupid and I don't like Cabbage Patch dolls and I don't want a Barbie doll and I da-da-da-da-da. And I was really... And I was like, I just can't role play with dolls and da-da-da-da. And I was having difficulty kind of socially. Like, I liked people, but for me, I found them kind of stupid. I didn't understand why everything took so long. And I found it very, very juvenile. So after a lot of begging, my mother allowed me to go in correspondence school, so like home education for a year. And that was just 1 year of my life, but that was amazing because she let me travel often with her friend Walter, who was the medical intuitive. So back in those days, we had the old analog phones, the ones that you'd have to dial around, it would ring through the house. So I would listen out for that phone call. And it would be exciting because it'd be like, oh, where are we going today? So he might get a phone call saying, oh, we need to travel to this town. might be a couple of hours away. There might be a land and house clearing that needs to be done. Or there might be another town a couple of hours away, an exorcism needs to be done, which was quite serious. Or we need to go and do energy healing here, or deliver herbs here. So I jump in the car, you know, almost like the Dukes of Hazzard style, like jumping in with enthusiasm through the window. And off we'd go, and I would watch and learn and observe. And it was an interesting situation because people often would say, oh, it's no place for a 7-year-old child to be, you know, this is, you know, serious work sort of thing. But I was never afraid. I mean, I saw all sorts of things. You know, in house clearings, I would see bowls of strawberries literally lifted up mid-air and thrown across the room, you know, by entities and all sorts of things. But I was never afraid. I was just constantly curious and watching the method of clearing. But communication was always a huge thing. So I was always like, why? But why is an entity here? You know, what do they want? You know, how do we communicate to make their lives better as well as ours, you know, in our human form? And when it came to healing, I just couldn't get enough of it. You know, if an adult had allowed me, I would practice my energy healing skills with them, whether that was using my hands or a crystal pendulum. And so that was kind of like my childhood. But then, like I say, going on, I went back to school, and then I went to a Catholic school for my high school. And that was quite strict. You know, you couldn't say you wanted to do energy healing because then you were trying to be like Jesus, and that was bad. So, yeah. But yeah, once I got out of school, back on my own path, I sort of, you know, started energy healing, started up my own business by the time I was 20, and it's been going great guns ever since. So
Awesome. You've covered quite a bit there. I was going to ask you, I love talking about things. I see little names and stuff in your bio, and some of them that I don't understand, which is the quantum alchemy. And that was going to be one of my things I wanted to know about, and you've covered that. So that's awesome. I'm super excited here. All right. So the Center for Expanding Consciousness. Tell us about that and how that got started and what that's all about.
yeah, sure. So most of my career, I've worked one-on-one with clients. Back in 2008, I qualified as a Reiki teacher. And so it was my first kind of modality that I taught and still teach to groups. That in itself was quite interesting. People ask, why do I teach Reiki when I'm a quantum energy alchemist? Because they're slightly different methods, you know, but even though I was an established energy healer and quantum energy alchemist before learning Reiki, I had a lot of people say to me, well, I want to learn, how do I learn how to be an energy healer? And back then in my early career, I really didn't know. I wasn't trying to be obnoxious, but I'd often just shrug my shoulders and say, I don't know, you just do it. Because a lot of it was just kind of native. I was just raised that.
Uh-oh. Did we freeze? Are you still there?
So that's why I learned Reiki, was so I had a method to teach others with. And then moving forward, like to the last couple of years, my practice, like one-on-one, just got so busy. I haven't been able to take on many new clients since about 2021 because I just couldn't keep up with all the work. So I really had to close my books and only take really complicated cases or cases that were very urgent, such as missing people or things like that. But what came out of that kind of slight change in the way I work is that I was guided from my own guides that I need to slow down the one-on-one client sessions, reduce that, create space so that I can start to teach. And from that came the Center for Expanding Consciousness. Because I really do feel like my whole purpose here on Earth is to remind people that they are their own best healers, that we have our own innate abilities that we're born with that allow us to heal. And my time on Earth and our time on Earth, we're going through a rapid transition of ascension. And during this, we've got a huge, a huge amount of technologies coming through. Some great technologies, some not so great. And so we're going through this massive technological kind of change. But my role is to remind us that everything we seek is within us, including healing. So rather than just sort of say, like people love to sort of go on about the med beds, and I completely believe in them, and I'm really grateful that they're coming or are here. But my role, nonetheless, is to remind us that we have all that within us, that you have all the energy, all the ability within you, if you are disciplined and know how to use it, to actually heal yourself and to expand your consciousness so that you can see interdimensionally, so that you can easily interact with our galactic brothers and sisters. You can go walking through the forest and interact with Sasquatch in a calm, peaceful way if you want to. It's all there for us. So that's kind of like where the Center for Expanding Consciousness really got its inspiration from, was really just finding a way that I could start to teach and coach people to expand their own consciousness enough that they feel completely empowered within their own sovereignty to heal and experience all these beautiful things that we have available to us, and not to be limited just with our own human lens. There's actually so much going on. And with this quickening that we're going through, this ascension that we're going through, people can feel a little unsure about it if they're not used to interacting interdimensionally. So it's really about just saying, well, what tools do you need to feel completely safe? Do you have all the tools within you to discern what you're interacting with? Do you have that discernment that can say, yes, the being that I'm interacting with is benevolent, or do they have sort of other intentions? How do we build up our light body to be nice and strong, so that it's a natural shield? And all these other things. So the Center of Expanding Consciousness is still evolving, but the idea is that it's going to be a number of courses that myself and others can teach, and it's going to have things like, obviously, like quantum healing, energy alchemy. Is going to have Reiki, but also remote viewing, because I'm a remote viewer as well. Out of body experiences, like how to have those at will, not just spontaneously. We're going to have courses on astral travel, as well as water communication, cacao ceremonies, which involve plant medicine to expand the heart. And with the heart expansion, that also helps us interact, interdimensionally as well. And then go into dreams and things like that. So the Center of Expanding Consciousness kind of is just an umbrella center for all these things that we can delve into. I'm also wanting to teach in about 2 years' time mind sight. So teaching people to put blindfolds on, but then still having full vision of everything around them. I feel like a technique like that allows them to, once again, just go through anywhere in our earth plane, but see interdimensionally, and with confidence, because a lot of people doubt things, right? They go, oh, I think I saw something, but I'm not sure. It's like all these programs are designed so that the individual can feel really certain about what they've seen and what they've experienced for themselves. Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Lee Warner has a question, which isn't the first question I thought she was going to ask, so we'll come back to this. Do you have a suggestion on how to decalcify your pineal gland?
Yeah, well, if you're having fluoride, don't. So, I mean, if your toothpaste or your water has fluoride in it, then, switch that out. I mean, in New Zealand, we've got lots of toothpaste brands and we've got fluoride-free brands. I get my water that I drink from like an aquifer that has not had any chemicals added to it, like chlorine and fluoride and things like that. And also activate the water. So if you have any modalities within you, such as Reiki or energy healing or anything like that, that's great. But even if you don't, if you just take the time every morning for about 3 to 5 minutes to bless the water that you drink. So whether that's a jug, a kettle, or a large bottle of drinking water, or if you're on tank water, do it to the whole tank. So just take a moment to really tune in to the water. Your thoughts and your heart coherence can structure that water. It can create energy signatures within the water, and therefore when you drink that water throughout the day, you are also changing the structure within you, because you're 70% water, and on a molecular level you're 99.9% water. So this is one of the most potent and effective grounded ways that you can actually start to decalcify the pineal gland. So if you're with that water, just go into heart coherence, a meditative state, feeling gratitude in your heart and breathing really slowly and steadily. And if you do that for 3 to 5 minutes, you should start to really generate and emit a lot of beautiful healing frequencies throughout your energy field, which will be embracing the water and structuring that water within it. Now, water has a most amazing ability to hold light. Most people don't think of water as a light carrier, but it is, like, big time. And science is only just on the threshold of actually understanding this. But because of its ability to hold light, and if you structure that water in a beautiful way where it becomes like these beautiful symmetrical patterns can start to form in there, and beautiful energy signatures, and there can be light codes. So I do a technique called crystallography, where I photograph frozen water after it's been blessed and had energy alchemy done to it. So I've seen how we have light codes embedded in the water and light put in there. So if you're drinking that throughout the whole day, you're going to start to do many things, including decalcify the pineal gland. And then, once that pineal gland is activated or decalcified, I mean, you will just be so aware of our multidimensional and interdimensional worlds. It's phenomenal, and on that note too, sometimes people ask me, like, oh, am I, or do I support psychedelics, or what's my opinion on psychedelics? I don't have any opinion on it other than my own personal choice, is that I don't touch psychedelics. But that's because if you lived through my mind and my lens and the things that I do, my world is so interesting as it is. I don't need any help. But that's because my pineal gland's kind of turned on, I should say. It's turned on enough that I don't need any more help. So, working with your light body every day, I guess that's probably the easiest tip, or the most simple tip I can give at this stage. But I hope that's answered your question.
Very good. That's great. So you continuously are one step ahead of me on everything that I was going to say or talk about here, because as you're talking about this stuff, I was thinking about the science experiment where they would like play music and then into water and then freeze the water, and it would, each different kind of vibration or frequency will freeze different like water memory in these crystals. And you kind of touched on that as well. And that's really interesting stuff. There's so much stuff that science now is putting together with water, and how much it holds thought or energy or whatever it is that I'm lost. I'm sorry. It holds all that information. There we go. Of these different things and vibrations and stuff. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're totally right. I mean, water is phenomenal. And I mean, watch this space too. Like, if anyone listening is interested in water, like, I've just spent the last 8 months nonstop traveling around New Zealand and also to America for a couple of weeks, to New York, Virginia, Washington, exploring the waters. So this whole last 8 months of just communicating, or not just, but, really deep diving into communicating with water has been phenomenal. And my guides have told me that we're going to get 7 phases of water known to us within the next couple of years, like by 2027. It's only a couple of years away. At the moment, we've got 4 phases of water, like liquid, solid, gas, but also plasma. And we're just starting to understand that plasma now, and then we're going to understand 3 more. And water is a consciousness technology as well. So like I say, we have the ability with our consciousness to structure water. And just something as well, like maybe for your listeners, for anyone that's energy sensitive and listening, if you travel, you can pick up the energy of a town or an environment. And if you have the opportunity to go to the water, like the local water body, whether it be a lake or a river or the ocean, tap into how that water is, because I believe it represents the energy of the whole town, of the whole population. So if something's really polluted, often that represents that, oh, the consciousness of this town or a lot of the people that live here is also quite polluted, and, you know, might require more energy healing or more attention to restructure itself and purify itself. And the opposite can be said. So if you go along and you find a really pristine lake, it's usually the consciousness of the people around that lake is also very pure and very able to access our source energy and cosmic information quite easily. So and yeah, like you say, with music can influence our water within us and around us. So, and that's another thing around the pineal gland and for other healing as well, is playing more classical music rather than your heavy, hard, like heavy metal and things like that. It's quite interesting, as in my practice, if a healing is not held for very long, then I need to start looking at external factors and environmental factors for someone, because usually a healing session, someone should get immediate benefits, you know, after one session. If it starts to go into 3 sessions, if they need 3 sessions for it to deal with a particular thing, then I start to think, this is not holding as I would expect. And I definitely don't go past 6 sessions for any one thing, because that's telling me that the modality I do is not the right one for this person. But the other thing I need to start investigating, okay, is what's happening in the environment for this person. And the first thing I go to is sound. So I ask them, you know, what kind of music do you like listening to? If they say heavy metal or really hardcore rap that has lots of language in there that is not optimal for healing, then I ask them to swap that out with something else. They're usually quite resistant, because most people don't want to swap that kind of music for classical or things like that. But if they're serious about healing, then they normally do it. And it's interesting, because classical music or healing music, even healing frequencies, will hold a quantum alchemy and healing session longer within their field, usually long enough that they can have full healing happen. But if they have a quantum energy alchemy session and then they blast themselves with heavy metal, they have to be very strong to resist that kind of frequency, you know, that straight away anyway. And yeah, music and sound also, like, you know, what's our media? Like, some people fall asleep with the radio on, and it can be all sorts of things. You know, our media talks about war and destruction and all this kind of negative stuff. So what are you doing to your subconscious? And you're, you know, like, just turn the radio off. If you're going to watch or listen to that kind of stuff, do it when you're fully alert and you know what you're taking in. Do it for, you know, 20 minutes, half an hour if you need to. But don't fall asleep to it, and don't have it just in the background where you're not paying attention, because then it's subconsciously programming itself into your mind, and it changes the energy within you, and it changes the structure of the water within you. It's quite toxic. So yeah, we start looking at these environmental factors to do with sound and words and music and that sort of thing as well.
Going back to your the town's water situation, do you think that the water influences the people in the town, or do you think the emotions of the people in the town, as you said, can change the water?
I think it's both. I think there's like a tipping point. I think when you have a lower population, then it is the water body, the water source, that influences those people. But there's a tipping point when you get too many people, and who are under the influence of, say, media or other negative influences, where they aren't consciously aware or connected to the natural environment enough, then then a tipping point can happen with the human population, where it starts to actually pollute the waters with the consciousness, not just with waste or chemicals or things like that, but actually with their consciousness. Whether people know it or not, you know, whatever goes on in your mind and your thoughts and your consciousness is out there. I mean, it's out in your energy field. We're all one. We're all connected, and within your consciousness and the way its ability to structure water and energy around you is very concentrated 3 meters out from you, but also a little more than that as well. So like if you're living near a close body, near a body of water like a lake, and you've got 10,000 people around there, they all only need to like hear the bad news on the radio at 6 p.m. for half an hour. And then they're all emitting a frequency that's kind of low vibe, and that's enough to restructure the water. And if they don't do anything to consciously undo what they've done, like a meditation or heart coherence or something like that, then it's just going to keep building, like the negativity will keep building on top of it itself. So yeah, if they're not doing something like a clearing or a healing, it just keeps building and building.
That makes perfect sense. We are live today on the show, so if you guys have any questions, we have a lot of people watching in the audience here. If you guys have any questions for Gina, throw them in the comments section, and we will get to them as soon as possible. So I want to transition here a little bit, and I'm going to choke. There we go. And so you mentioned Sasquatch and some of these other entities and beings. I wonder, do you think that these beings, the extraterrestrials that you interacted with at a young age, as well as Sasquatch, do you think that these things are more flesh and blood, like people believe, like apes or like an animal species, or do you think that they're more interdimensional, as you said? And then as far as the beings that you specifically interacted with when you were younger, the 3 of them, do you think that they're interdimensional, or do you think that they came from another planet?
Great questions. Well, I'll start with the Sasquatch. So for me, I feel they're just native. They are more of a native interdimensional being. And native meaning that they've been here longer, like in the earth plane and within our density, longer than humans. So I feel like this is their primary dimension that they've lived in and existed in forever, like for eons, and yeah, for longer than us. I feel like humans, you know, when we did come to this planet, we're a mix and kind of like a hybrid of extraterrestrial races and, you know, things like that. So we're kind of more new to this planet and this dimension than what the Sasquatch are. So I feel like they've always been here. I don't really feel like they're exactly like apes or monkeys. You know, when I've kind of tapped into a Sasquatch energy and had communication with them, it's not that they say no, but they're a little offended by it. They're kind of like, no. It's, you know, it's sort of like, I don't know, maybe it's their sense of humor, but they're like, well, you kind of look like a sloth, but we don't call you a sloth. You know, why are you trying to, you know, make these parallels? So, I mean, I don't know, but that's just how they sort of describe it to me visually when they're trying to communicate their point of view to me. So yeah, I feel like they're more native. They are interdimensional, but they very much exist within our earth plane. Yeah, this is their primary frequency that they live in. But they're very good at shielding and cloaking, as you guys know. I mean, you don't go, you know, you can't really find a Sasquatch. You've got to wait for them to find you, sort of thing. So yeah. I mean, in New Zealand, I mean, in America, I know Sasquatches are kind of, you know, it's a big deal over there, or like you have a lot more kind of people really into Sasquatches. It's not so much the same here in New Zealand, but the Sasquatch energy is growing, and I don't know why. I mean, it just is. It's like, I think it's just that more people are kind of becoming more connected to nature and also entering their own level of consciousness where they can have more interactions with Sasquatches. But there's a lot of people really curious, or starting to get more and more people curious about Sasquatch in New Zealand, you know, going into the forests and using parabola mics to try and record, you know, sounds from Sasquatches and looking for traces and things like that. You know, and even through some of our CE5 work that we've done here in New Zealand, we'll get a sense of their presence. And they have contacted, you know, like myself and another CE5 friend of mine to sort of like go into the ranges. Like we've got the Tauranga ranges here in New Zealand, and we've gone in there to do some healing work, but we've sort of wondered, why did the Sasquatch give us this message? But when we went tramping and we went into the forest, we realized, oh, there's been a huge, you know, culling of trees. You know, there was just trees knocked down for acres and acres and acres, and you could almost feel the trauma of the land, you know, just with all these trees just being recently felled. And then we understood why we had that message from the Sasquatch to go on this tramp in a certain direction and to be there. So we sat there doing an energetic clearing for the land, and you know, doing what we do as healers, like we, you know, do a land clearing and then bring in nice energies and so forth. And we did that with the guidance of the Sasquatch. So even though we don't physically see the Sasquatch, there is a telepathic communication that we sense here as well. Yeah.
Interesting. I don't mean to make it more like a this or that kind of thing, because as you know, like, you know, when you're in tune with the energies and the frequencies and stuff like that, there's no reason to believe that these things can't be flesh and blood, but also on this higher level of spiritualness that, you know, I think people kind of throw that into a category of one thing or another, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. You know, like I said, if people can be, you know, telepathic or, you know, mediums or astral project, there's no reason to think that every other animal on this planet can't do it as well, you know. So interesting. So the part 2 of that was the beings that you interacted with, the 3 of them. Do you think that they were from this planet, or do you think that they were from a different planet?
I think they were from a different planet, but they do often tell me that they were very, very familiar with humans. I feel like they've had some experience here. Now, whether that means that they've physically lived, you know, here as humans and they are simply our future selves, I'm not quite sure about that. They seem to be very much their own sort of consciousness, but they know us well enough that it gives me the impression they've lived here before. But they seem to be eons ahead of us, and they seem to be rather medical in their approach to life, like scientific and medical. You know, other beings that I've interacted with since then, you have all sorts of different feelings and vibrations to them. Some are very loving, very healing, very graceful. These beings, I wouldn't say were elegant or graceful. They're a little bit clumsy, actually, but very medical and kind of science-based. I feel like they are more interplanetary. They have their own craft, which tells me that they're kind of, for me, that's how I see them, as a mid-consciousness level, meaning they're very much advanced in terms of our consciousness. But when I view different galactic beings, it's almost like the ones that don't need the craft anymore have kind of superseded a certain level of consciousness. Because they know and understand their own Merkaba or their own energy body well enough that they can travel anywhere without the need of kind of manifesting a physical material craft. So they're kind of more in that kind of intermediate kind of stage of evolution or consciousness, where they're still using their consciousness to create a craft, and they still are affiliated with a star cluster. It's not just one planet, but it's a cluster. It's like a small community of stars where these beings call their home. And this star cluster obviously resonates at a certain frequency that holds and attracts them there. But I feel like with our whole kind of evolution, that we all have the ability to kind of exist on many different stars and star clusters. It all depends on what we resonate with. So, you know, we are here on Earth at the moment because that's what we resonate with the most at this point in time in our consciousness and our evolution. But, you know, we've got consciousness never dies, energy never dies, it's just eternal. So we've probably got, you know, a couple of million different lifetimes on different planets and star clusters to experience yet. And it's the same with kind of like our dimensions. You know, you reside on the one that you resonate with the most at any point in time. And then, of course, you can get into time, right? You know, what is time? It's not linear. It's all kind of existing at once. So maybe we just have all these different aspects experiencing different dimensions at once. But yeah, that's my feeling about the beings that I interacted with as a child, is that they were kind of us at one point. They understand the frequency that is going on here on Earth right now. They've passed that by a couple of eons. They're residing in a different star cluster now, because that's what they currently resonate with. And but they visit us because they've got a connection with us, and they know how to help us, and they're curious. It's a little bit just like how we might walk through the forest and stop and stare at a tree or stare at some insects and just observe them for a while. It's kind of the same feeling I get from them. They're like kind of going through the universe and stop and stare at us for a while, and just interact that way. Yeah.
Interesting. So I have a question, kind of off topic, but around this stuff. So here in the U.S., we have a lot of like the disclosure hearings and stuff where the government's actually coming forward and talking more about the UAPs, UFOs and stuff. How is your situation going down in New Zealand there with the government disclosure, or what is the whole feeling of UFOs, extraterrestrials around the country there?
Sure. So in terms of mainstream news, our government doesn't do anything with disclosure, like nothing at all. So when people here are interested in disclosure, we are looking to the American media or the European media. We know there's a little bit kind of going on in Australia, but not much. I've seen UFOs like even when I was a child actually fly over New Zealand, and I remember one landing in Australia, and I remember checking media and the newspapers to see what happened to it, and that was taken away very fast. There was just this cover-up story of, it landed on a farm in the outback, and then it's just suddenly disappeared. But none of the information about what happens after a UFO landing or anything like that, nothing gets released. So no, in New Zealand, nothing happens. I'm not even sure our Defence Force would know exactly what to do. I'm sure they've got a backup plan, but we are such a small kind of country. I guess we just kind of get forgotten about that. I'm not entirely sure we've got a dedicated facility here for, hiding or covering up UFOs that get retrieved. But we certainly have a lot of activity. But, when we go out and do CE5, we're kind of privileged here, because not only do we have some of the largest dark sky reserves in the world, and it is seriously stunning. I mean, the depth of stars that you can see, with your bare naked eye, you can actually see other galaxies. And I noticed when I was in America that it's not quite as clear with the bare eye, like you can't see the swirl of other galaxies out there. So, we're really privileged like that. We've got amazing opportunity just as a witness the skies, see craft, see UFO. We've got beautiful nature elementals here as well, and interdimensional beings. And we have not much military influence. So that's great, because our military is small. So at this point in time, I feel really privileged to be here at this place on Earth, because we can kind of do what we do without the military influence. I'm not going to say like it's completely not there. I mean, I have seen, on occasion, the odd black helicopter go by, or, certain things get detected. But I guess that's where, as the, CE5 teams, where we go into shielding or cloaking, ensuring that we've created a dome of energy around us in the land and the sky that we're working with, to create a safe environment where we can invite our extraterrestrial friends to come into. And we work hard as a team to make sure that our heart coherence is strong, and that we've cloaked out our ET friends' presence so that it's not detected by our military. I know that we have some things here. I mean, we have, we do have frequency weapons and things like that, but it doesn't get utilized as much. It would get utilized more in like people protests and things like that. And I'm not sure if our military has things that could detect like neutrino light, and I know the US does.
She froze up again.
feel like we may have just cut out there for a little bit.
A little bit there. Yep, you froze up.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's fascinating. So, all right, we have one question here from Lee. If you guys have any other questions before we wrap things up here, we're almost at the end of the show, so throw them in the comments section. We'll get them in before we close out here. Lee would like to know, what other kind of creatures are in New Zealand besides hobbits? Do you have hobbits in New Zealand?
Of course we do. Yeah, we love our hobbits. We even have Hobbit Town and all sorts of things. Yeah, oh, what sort of creatures? Well, I guess, one that might differentiate us, we have the taniwha. So, we're very familiar with the taniwha energy. Well, the taniwha is a Māori name. It's a serpent energy. It's a dragon energy. So that's been a long time here and talked about throughout our legends for many, many centuries, if not millennia. And the taniwha is more of a guard. If you think about dragons as a protector energy, they often guard the waters, so the rivers, the lakes, the oceans. They're also a protector or a guardian. In New Zealand, we call them a kaitiaki, a guardian of people, so a tribe or a community. We have some amazing taniwha around. We have some volcanoes here in New Zealand, and so, for example, our central volcano, Mount Ruapehu, on the southern node of that mountain is an energy or a galactic node, and there's an amazing taniwha dragon that exists there as a protector for the fire energy that comes out of the volcano. One of my favorite kind of and less talked about and less acknowledged taniwha is a dragon energy that is a mist dragon that oversees our dream time and helps protect the mist, and because our dreams are very much connected and carried through water. So the mist that can sit on the land during the early hours of the morning when everyone's in dream time, there's a dragon energy that protects that dream time energy, so keeps it safe for the people. So we have taniwha all over. It's interesting. Sometimes when I do intuitive readings for people, I can, see the taniwha that may have journeyed with them for certain reasons, or journeyed with their ancestors throughout New Zealand. So, yeah, that's the main one I can think of in New Zealand is the taniwha. Yes, we have the hobbits, thanks to Lord of the Rings. We have the Poripari are a fairy folk here. They look quite different to the normal fairies that I guess they're not a Tinkerbell fairy. That's what I'm trying to say. So I guess in America, with Disney, Walt Disney, it's been popularized to how fairies might look like Tinkerbell, for example. The Poripari here are more, if you think about a farm fence, that height of a farm or cattle fence, they're about that high. And they exist more in the forests, in the wilderness, and they're very, very mischievous and cheeky, so very similar to the kind of energy of fairies. They will like to play tricks, so they've been known to go into retreats into the forests. There's a number of different, we've got a lot of forests here in New Zealand and with retreat centres, and it's quite common to know that if there's a Poripari kind of family around, that they will come in and just play tricks and kind of confuse people, but they enjoy that. They enjoy kind of, just it's quite funny for the humans too, but it can be baffling. They can baffle us. It'd be like, I'm sure I left something here and it's not there, and then it's found somewhere else. And so they kind of play with us a bit, but not in a malicious way, just in a kind of humorous way. But once again, they're very, very respectful. A couple of years ago, I lived on a property that had a totra tree forest in the back of the property, and the Poripari were in there, and I should just set very firm boundaries that they were allowed to go to the back fence line, but they weren't allowed to come like onto the actual backyard or into my house. I've got children. I've got 2 children. And so I just set my boundaries and said no, because they can just get a little too mischievous. And, on top of having 2 children, I'm like, that's my limit. You stay in the forest. And if we have any interactions, it's when I go into the forest. So yeah, that's what's coming to mind at the moment. But yeah.
Interesting. I think this will be our last one then for you. Does New Zealand have indigenous people?
Yes, we do. We have the Māori people here of New Zealand. They've been here for around about 900 years. Prior to that, we had the Moriori peoples. We don't have any full-blooded Moriori here, and we don't have any full-blooded Māori people here either. So everyone's sort of mixed. And yeah, they're the native peoples of New Zealand in terms of the indigenous people. If you want to go back even further, in terms of, say, the time, and I'm meaning, like, you know, if we keep going further and further back, we have the Waitaha as well. And I'll just correct that, as we still have Waitaha people, but they have a different energy and frequency to them. The Waitaha are more connected with the fact that we're all one, and we have a lot of ancient rocks here in New Zealand that have been documented. Some have been documented back to be calendar stones, you know, right back to right to the time of Orion. So going back about 13,000 years, the calendar stones from then. And it was believed that back then we had Waitaha, you know, people there, and then, like, witnessing this, they seem to have the knowledge within them that can tell the oral stories of even right back to then. And we have ancient pyramid called the Kaimanawa Wall, which is mostly buried underground. I visited the wall. You can see only a couple of meters of the wall. I mean, it's a very grand structure. And there's amazing underground aquifers or water flow under this, but you're going quite underground here, under the pyramid, that flow into our central lake Taupo, and that lake was created by a volcanic eruption. It's one of the largest eruptions of the world. And so all this beautiful water that flows through this underneath this pyramid gets structured by the energy there and flows into this lake. It's very, very powerful. And, you know, the Waitaha people can tell stories of that pyramid. And saying that, though, in terms of, like, disclosure, because we were talking about disclosure earlier, we've had LiDAR detectors go over and detect this pyramid. But the most that we are allowed to say in New Zealand, when I say allowed, the most that gets revealed is that we're allowed to call this stone structure a wall. It's not a wall, it is an actual pyramid of these amazing ginormous stones. And even though LiDAR detectors have said that, yes, there's a big structure here underground, that it continues underground a long way, the government wouldn't release that information publicly. So the people that did that LiDAR detection, I mean, they've got the information, but it's not allowed to be public. So it's interesting, you know, we've got pyramids here, but the world doesn't know it. And it's got the most amazing energy there and the most amazing beings in that forest as well. So yeah, I'm probably going off track a little bit, but
do you know what the pyramid is called?
Kaimanawa. So yeah, that's the name of it, Kaimanawa. We call it the Kaimanawa Wall, but it's the Kaimanawa Pyramid. It's more accurate, yeah.
That's interesting. I love the whole aquifer under it. That really brings a lot to the whole pyramid topic and stuff, about as using them as like some sort of power plant or energy source or something, you know, with the whole water, and really makes you wonder more about the history of that stuff. So interesting.
It does, yeah. And actually, I'll just for a moment just expand on that too, around the waters, because when I've done work at the Kaimanawa Forest, I've done CE5 there, and man, it's very, very, very powerful. But we have the shining ones, like the beings called the shining ones, that appear to guard the Kaimanawa pyramid. And if you're energetically sensitive, you know, you need to ask permission to enter the pyramid or that area, that zone, before doing so. You're actually almost just, it's like this energetic wall, you actually almost get stopped. So even people that aren't energy sensitive just say they have this feeling like they're not allowed to go any further until they've stopped and actually sensed the land and asked permission to go and explore the land energetically. So the shining ones are there, as well as other beings. But interestingly enough, last time I was there, I took water, and I didn't set any intention other than just to allow the frequencies of the Kaimanawa pyramid to structure the water. And then when I got home, I placed this water into a petri dish and I froze the water for just over 5 minutes. And when I do that, the crystalline structure starts to happen, and then I photograph it. And it actually has a very clear pyramid in the water with all this beautiful energy emanating from the top. And some people could say they could actually see the word love written in it as well. And it's very, very clear. So it's amazing how the water can confirm messages as well. And it did confirm that there's a pyramid there. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. All right. Well, we are at the end of our show today. I appreciate so much you coming on and sharing all this with us, and sharing your time as well. You know, like I said, it is 5 a.m. or it was 5 a.m. When we started this over there. And thank you so much for joining us. Everyone seems to have enjoyed it. There you go. Awesome. Very cool show. Sad I missed most of it. We'll rewatch fully through. Thanks. And awesome. So all kinds of stuff. But thank you. Oh, before we go, we do have listeners again in Australia and all over the world. We actually have shows on the Untold Radio Network from Australia. So if you have any events coming up, anything that you want people to come in person and meet you, or any retreats or anything, or your shows, you have podcasts and stuff that you do, or the expanding consciousness stuff as well. Your YouTube channel link is in the show notes for anybody interested, but tell everybody what you got coming up.
Yeah, so I think the main one that people might be interested in is an interdimensional awareness CE5 retreat. So that's where we do CE5 in the forest, as well as doing sky watching in the evenings. And that's coming up in our New Zealand Labour weekend, which is in October. And I am teaching Reiki here in New Zealand, not so easily accessible for people internationally. But if anyone wants to make contact, my Facebook is Gina Noetica. Instagram is Expanding Consciousness with Gina, and that's my YouTube channel as well, Expanding Consciousness with Gina. But people can message me through those channels if they've got any questions. And yeah, always happy to have a conversation with people.
Awesome. Very cool. Like I said, the YouTube and your Facebook are included in the show notes for anybody that are interested in getting in contact with you. I keep losing my voice, and I apologize.
I'm a little bit croaky because of the time of morning it is too, so I completely understand. But thank you so much for having me, Barnaby, and thank you to your listeners too. It's been an honor, and thank you for letting me share my story.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure having you on. I really appreciate it. And I feel like I will have to have you back, because there's so much more that we can dig into here and so many other things to talk about. So thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, all things here on the Untold Radio Network, as well as Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, and all of Gina's stuff. Head on over to her YouTube channel, and it's in the show notes. Click on that and subscribe, like, and share. Until next time, guys, thank you all for watching and tuning in. And remember, we're all part of the Paranormal Spectrum. Take care, be well, and I'll see you next week.
You seem to know something I don't. What's going on?